Hello everyone, I am Ranjan Dhar, co-founder of Nibble Foods. So today we have with us today Inés Rindoni. So it's our pleasure and privilege of uh, having her with us today once again. She is a spiritual healer, a master in integrative breathwork, osteopathy, and a craniosacral therapist. So she also specializes in quantum Ayurvedic and integrative medicine, incorporating the mind, body, spirit, and lifestyle. So with all her impressive skills and vast knowledge, she has co-founded Healiness, an organization helping and inspiring individuals to embrace their innate healing abilities and lead fulfilling lives. So welcome Ina, it's great having you with us today once again. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you, Rajan. Thank you for having me again.
Right. So in our last podcast, we touched upon breathing as a topic and the 4x4 box technique. So today we'll be diving deep into the topic and will introduce a new technique to elevate stress and anxiety, I believe, and also go deep into relationships between children, parents, and corporations. So tell us more about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the breathing technique has a lot to do with a way of bringing our current emotional state into the focus, regardless of what's going on the outside. The reason why we're speaking about children, parents, and the corporations is because we have a lot of loss. We have the recent actually studies, I'll just look at the notes. The recent studies in Canada revealed 200 billion annual loss in productivity due to burnout and stress.
Okay.
Now, if we look at corporations, which mainly run most of the world that we're in, because everybody needs a job, is an entrepreneur, everybody has that collective need to provide. Nobody's talking about the platform that we go home to. Nobody's really focusing on the disconnection at home between the children and the parents, between couples, between the basic values that we had way back then, where parents come home or father or mother comes home and everything is shut down. It's time for family. We have electronics, we have this digital world that we have been using as much as we can to help us. But when we really put on paper how much of screen time we spent during the day, we're not offsetting any of that when we come at home. We're still answering emails, we're still sending our feedback outside of our home environment, where as humans, we should be spending that time with our children or whoever is at home to try to build a relationship so that in the future they have history to come back to in terms of values and who they really are. The I'll touch base on the grounding and the focus when it comes to the box breathing, because box breathing, it's very simple. We'll introduce it today because it's something that we can take or we can do even in a lineup at a grocery store or in the car. It's not something that we have to really be laying down for, have a specific environment. It's just to ground us in the moment, to give us peace so that we can collectively make decisions in whatever it is, whatever else it is that we're doing.
Right.
The the sense of collectiveness, when we talk about the children today, a generation or generations that we're supposed to be investing in, I would say has been lost since even going back to 60s. We had the era back then when people were people talked about hippies, and they have this an enigma of the free life. But the misinterpretation of what they tried to do was just to have the free mind, to have the ability to freely think, which was taken to the next level into psychedelics and everything else. The yearning that I personally go to and why I bring up those decades is that pharmaceuticals and everything else in terms of controlling how and what we do, which we are part of. Like we have rules. How do you drive? Do you drive on the left side of the road or the right? Everything has to be structured. So we have conditioned our minds to work the same way. Everything needs to have a reason, a purpose. We question everything from a analytical point of view where we have forgotten to just create values that are important to us, that were important to our ancestors. In today's digital age, we often substitute face-to-face connections with online engagements. And you see it with, little babies, they start to learn the language. You put an iPad in front of them, you put the phone, they start crying, here's an electronic, or feed them, or give them something to occupy to distract them. It is no different when we talk about the impact of the children later on when they grow up, because we teach them to run away from problems, to run away from anything that's uncomfortable. Because trauma, as we know it in the past, we would sit down and actually address it. If there's an issue or misunderstanding, we would sit down and talk and expect to be heard. Today, everything needs to be fixed in an instant. And in this transition of the digital world, the problem is that we're losing the feeling to who we are. We're losing the familiar feeling of, touch to touch, sitting down and actually talking, listening before we're trying to create a response when somebody's telling us a story. Sometimes we just need to listen. We're not able to. So when we talk about community involvement, if it's at home, if it's at school, if it's at a co-curricular, at a corporation, we're experiencing a huge loss in productivity, regardless of which platform it is, if it's in the education delivery, if it's in the retrieving information, because we're not teaching history. And the same thing is happening at home. So in the corporate world, what we have been focusing on with the educational sector is to teach people that, okay, you don't have to physically have a problem or a disease to look at your life right now and to figure out with our help how I can sort through this information, where I can create more peace, be productive, and take that knowledge and pass it on. So if it's the teams or anybody at the middle level executives or the high executives, most of these people are parents too. So how do they show up at home? Most of us are successful in corporations and whatever it is that we love to do because we keep doing the same thing and we're ready to evolve on that level. But it doesn't mean that mentally and physically and spiritually and emotionally we are as available to our families, or that we are as available to us. So today's podcast, I will be teaching you a simple box breathing so that we'll take it one thing at a time, one breath at a time, so that we can at least center and feel. And most of us and most of you will not perhaps feel anything. Maybe afterwards you feel like it was a waste of time. However, with repetition, you will find that not feeling or thinking anything for those 4, 5, 6 minutes actually contributes a lot to your wellness, because as you were breathing, the monkey mind, the chatter wasn't on. So it gave you a little bit of ability to pause and to focus on something else that's perhaps coming up, or maybe a decision that you couldn't make, or, a stress that you couldn't get rid of, because it wasn't a stress, it was a thought process that was overwhelmed.
Right. Right. I mean, yeah, we'll also go deep into that breathing technique that you mentioned. So just
Yes,
before that, you mentioned about the child-parent relationship today, right? I mean,
yes,
while technology is a boon in many ways, right, it is also a disadvantage, right, where it's getting misused a lot, right? Especially when parents are busy, they are in their work, they don't have time for the kids, right? And the kids, they just take iPad, laptop, or whatever, right? And they start surfing on the net, right? So
exactly.
how would you, look to change that? I mean, obviously the change has to come within the parents and from the parents, right? So
Yes.
how would you look to change that angle?
The intergenerational impact, the absence of collectiveness, um, generating lack of connection, emotional, mental, physical. It's here because we're made of in the physical realm. Usually stems from the past. Our parents perhaps weren't available emotionally. Perhaps there was something that they have gone through in their childhood. So the priorities were to put the food on the table, for the parents to show up physically, and then go into evening routines and then do it all over again. The connections leading to the emotional and psychological stress is passed down through generations. We talked about this before. If we have four glasses and one is filled with, let's call it, orange juice, right? And let's say the last glass is empty. As we keep moving the liquid and adding water, we keep cleansing the sugars and everything else that perhaps down the road that we don't need. So this could be, any abuse, perhaps, the lack of having a security or safety, hurt, um, unavailable healthy habits. We're clearing these through generations as long as we're doing work and passing that on through example. The
Right.
parenting challenges today is, like we said, is they don't have a supportive community because they're supposed to show up perfect. They're supposed to be the role models for the kids. There's a big sense of the ego that's used to show up, but who are you showing up for if you can't show up for yourself? So a lot of these burdens are tucked away and they're not revisited because this works for me right now. I'm making this much. This is what I need to do in parallel. I have my kids in private school. I pick them up. They have before and after school program on, certain breaks. I can afford to send them to, like trips. So the mental financial focus is not aligned with the expectations of the life that we want to have. The healing through the same community also doesn't have a voice because we didn't grow up with, hey, how was your day? Let's talk about what happened today. Most of the events that happen at school, regardless if they're positive or negative, we didn't think they were important enough perhaps to communicate to the parents, or when we get picked up, perhaps the parents are stressed and we don't want to add another layer to the burden. And all this just gets compact and we grow with it. And then we create another layer in addition to intergenerational programming that we're not aware at all unless we actually look into it. So it's not just about breeding, it's really looking at how do you show up for yourself every day? So when we talk to the top executives, these are highly efficient people. They achieve whatever they set on the goals. They have huge teams that micromanage whatever is that they need to do. And their job or their position in the corporation is just to be creative. Now, how are you creative with something if you don't have a topic? So how can you take it to the next level when you're not sure what's broken? It doesn't have to be broken. It's just another focus in line with the visions that they have, so that when we feel the change, when we show up for our kids and when we bring them up consciously, we can actually sit there and observe and not just leave 9 to 5 and look at when is the next lunch break, when is the next this break, and when do I drop them off? When do I pick them up without actually being present as parents? So it's about breaking the cycle. It's creative support and strong family bonds, which we just replicate in the educational system and in the corporations, because the corporations, they're here to invest financially. So if they don't invest in their staff and in the culture, these are the individuals at different tiers that are getting paid to bring ideas, to bring suggestions where we can take it to the next level. But how do we do that when we have $200 billion in loss in productivity due to anxiety and stress alone. So then what is it when we talk about the physical? How many of these people actually end up with physical disease? And this is going back 10 years. This is going back 40 years. So if we are at loss this much in 2024, 2023, going back to 2010, then what can we expect from our children and generation? Adding another 20 years, we'll just keep sinking. And once you reach that platform, you can't go any deeper. And it's too late to talk about it then, because the communication is lost and everybody's on the same band with low vibrations, low thinking, depression, lack of energy, movement, just lack of energy. And because we need energy, we need the physical movement. How are you going to be able to exercise or have an idea to go outside, to spend time, to love your family and be in this existence if you're constantly depressed? So that's why I think, at Healiness, we have different programs where 3, 6, 9, and a year program, and then long-term programs for the clients, where we look at the corporations, we look at their structures, we look at the parents, we look at the individuals, because most of them, they've been doing what has been working for them, but they're still stressed, they're overwhelmed, they have no energy. And they justify it by, I'll take a trip here, and they're still working. The electronics are still on. There's no disconnection for that inner peace. So it's very important, and it's very I get very emotional when I look at the children, because it's not about telling them what to do. It's not about disciplining them when we're not disciplined. Just because, I go to gym every morning at 5, that's my routine. It's the only time that I can get my gym time. Doesn't mean that I'm lifting weights. I'm swimming, I'm meditating, I'm doing different types of work, but the physical work. So what does that help me with? I sweat, I eliminate that, the physical burden or whatever is there, so that my cells can move, my circulation is better. But then there's the emotional and mental component through breath work that we release, that we need facilitators now to be there to take that apart and to convert it to a different energy. So a lot of these people, and I say these people because they're different types of breath work, they take a course and they take different groups, and okay, they feel great. But then these groups, these people, individuals, they wake up with all these released emotions and mental, like destructive components, and nobody has taught them what to do because they were booked online. We have no history. And these facilitators, they're not healers. They're not even massage therapists. Like, they basically had them do the work. Right now they're breathing better. Perhaps they were crying or they were laughing, like they're feeling lighter. But then once everything comes back, then you put them back in the same container their life. You're not mentoring them. You're not telling them what to expect. Not addressing perhaps their biggest burden. Maybe, this lady wants to lose 10 pounds and everything else she thinks is perfect in her life. This gentleman who showed up, he's well-spoken and everything else. But you ask him what's important to you, he can answer the question. What makes you happy? He can answer the question. You have people who have had physical trauma. They were, their personal values were touched upon when they were children. They were molested from family members, from neighbors, whatever. And nobody knows about it. So through this reading, this trauma will come up. They can express because they don't remember, right? And these are the parents from today. These were perhaps our parents, and all this gets passed on. And then in today's generation, when we have, children not reacting perhaps positively, what do? We punish them. We don't even ask why they're reacting the way they're reacting, or we ban them from X, Y, and Z, or if they're good, we reward them with electronic time, with the screen time. So everything is upside down. So just everything is upside down. So the box breathing today, when we talk about how grounding happens and what the focus is, it's very rewarding, and I'll make it so simple so that anybody can take it anywhere. And it's really healing, because when we grounding is what? It's the earth, it's the trees, it's the Mother Earth, right? So back in the day, people would walk in the forest and hug the trees, right? It was normal. Today, when you see a person hugging the trees, you take out your phone, like, should I call 911? Like, why is this person hugging the tree? What is wrong with this person? Because we're literally taking literally information that we get from online without really understanding what it is that we're getting in return, or what it is that we're doing in a process. But
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
so the grounding and the focus when it comes to the box breathing, why we call it a box breathing is that I want you to visualize a square. A square 4x4.
Okay.
So what this means that I would like you to take an inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, and hold for 4 seconds. And then just breathe. And every time we repeat, our body shifts energy from different parts, depending on where it's stacked, where it's stressed, perhaps where it has too much energy, so that we can recalibrate the physical body to create more movement. Okay? So we'll start by inhaling for 4 seconds. I'll have you do it with me so that you can feel the difference as well.
Yeah.
So first, we'll just take a deep breath and just exhale, just to reset whatever it is that we just talked about.
Okay.
So think a square, 4x4. And
Okay.
this is the easiest way to remember it.
Sure.
So we'll inhale for 4 seconds through the nose. Hold for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale for 4 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. And hold for 4 seconds. Okay. And then just breathe. Okay. If we want more energy, so why we did it through the nose? Whenever we breathe through the nose, we have a more calming effect, because most of the oxygen is going to the brain. Whenever we breathe through the mouth, we want more energy, because we're activating different part of the nervous system so that we can flood the body with energy.
Right.
So I'll demonstrate both so that you can see what the difference is, and then you're free to do it with me, and then we'll talk about what you feel after. Okay.
Sure.
So first we'll breathe through the nose.
Okay.
Exhale for 4. Sorry, I just did that wrong. So
Okay.
we'll inhale so we'll do it again. So we'll inhale through the nose, we'll hold for 4, and exhale through the nose, and then hold for 4.
Okay.
Okay, ready? So and then just let your body breathe. And you notice when I inhale, my chest and my shoulders go up. When I inhale through here, what happens? My lungs go up, because I'm inhaling through my throat, through my thyroid. Okay, so when I exhale, when I'm just using the mouth, we'll have, so it's a more of a dropping the effect, versus, because when we inhale through the nose, like I said, we're working with the brain. When we inhale through the mouth, we're working through the rest of the body.
Right.
So we'll inhale through the mouth now, and we'll just use the box breathing technique. So we'll inhale for 4 seconds. Now, what do you notice in terms of the difference when you exhale through your nose versus when you exhale through your mouth?
So one thing, I mean, physiologically, what I understood is when I'm exhaling or inhaling through my mouth, the air becomes dry. My mouth also becomes dry, right? And then when I'm inhaling through my nose, I mean, the air is humidified, right? And yeah, I'm feeling that in my brain also, right? That my brain is getting more oxygen and it is feeling more calm and relaxed. Whereas I mean, inhaling and exhaling through the mouth, I'm getting a little bit of palpitation. If I mean, if I'm correct.
Because what happens is when this happens to someone, so to you right now, that tells me that you're a shallow breather. So that you don't breathe consistently, and perhaps when you sleep, maybe you skip breathing, or like you breathe and then you change between the mouth and the nose, because you're not used to breathing through your mouth. You're not used to activating the heart chakra. You're not used to moving that much oxygen through your body.
Okay.
So when we do it consciously, the brain really does, like that chatter has no place. So we're just flooding that part of the body and that organ. And when we notice that big of a shift, it means that there's a lack of oxygen in that space. Okay. So now let's talk about who should be doing, box breathing through the nose versus the mouth, right? When we train, let's say, or when we're in a situation where we're stressed, remember what everybody tells you right away: take a deep breath, calm down, and just come back, right?
Right.
If I'm stressed and I am freaking out and I am frustrated and I'm panicking, me breathing through my nose and through my mouth and taking a deep breath will do what to the body? It'll cause more stress, because now I have all this oxygen, all this energy, and I've just amplified the feeling that I have. So we have to do the opposite. So if we're preparing ourselves for a big meeting and we need to collect the thoughts, or like we feel low in energy, or we feel we're nervous, we're anxious, this is how you determine what you want your end goal to be, what you want your focus to start with, and what the effectiveness of the breath that you're doing. So the box breathing originally started with just calming and inhaling through the nose, because it's simple. It's 4x4. It's everybody remembers it. But then we discovered with anything where you want to flood your body and you don't remember anything else, do the box breathing, because you'll get more oxygen, but it also eliminates that stagnant energy where you're like, oh, I'm so tired. Instead of having a power bar or sugar, or a drink or something, you can do this to get you to the next phase. And then figure out, like, why were you anxious? Maybe you were not prepared. Maybe you're just anxious before the meeting, whatever it is. So then we can work on the rest. Okay. So the effectiveness of the box breathing has two purposes. One, to calm the brain, the mind, and the other one to bring in as much energy as we want, because taking a deep breath versus deeper, it really depends on the capacity of your lungs and the breathing patterns that you have been doing your whole life, or maybe they were disturbed in the last year or whatever it is. Also, when we have physical trauma, anything in the neck and the shoulders, anything in the upper body, we can use this box breathing to release it, just to recalibrate the energies, whatever tension is sitting up here.
Right. Right. So, I mean, if I understand this correctly, so whenever someone is stressed out, or they're having a panic attack, or they have an important meeting and they need to relieve their stress in some way, you're saying breathing through the nose with this 4x4 box technique is the helpful way to achieve, I mean, relieve
Yes,
the stress, right?
to relieve the stress. And then, we have like the lack of the physical play and the outdoor time when we talk about the children. The same applies to the adults. The only difference is the age group. The impact of the society on the brain development for children, but brain development on adults when it comes to excessive screen time, right? By 12, different parts of the brain develop for children. So the coordination, the senses, the ability, like, to bring the awareness, motor skills. But for adults, if it's the same thing, it's just on the next level, because at certain age we start achieving that heaviness a lot quicker. We have harder time eliminating calories, sugars, whatever is sitting there. So then when we add this tension of stress, which is, virtual, it's abstract, for us, it's easier to reason, yeah, everybody has stress and it just go this way. Children, they'll speak, they'll tell you, they'll act, they're innocent, they don't know how to mask their feelings. But between the age of 5, they exceed that visual component where their eyes are now too attached. There's no blinking, there's no movement, there's no development, like the 180 up and down and certain mobilities that they need to do to develop this part of the brain.
Right.
So then what happened when it's not, by the age of 12, it's easier to correct it if you're aware of it. But we haven't been doing that so far in majority of the population because we're just finding the research and scientific backups now because that's how great the numbers are. That, most of our children, they're wearing, prescription glasses. Why? Like you said, dry mouth, dry eyes, dry skin, electrosmog from the screens. And we mean well, and that's how we are wording them.
Right.
Instead of physically, okay, let's go to the park or let's go do an activity together. Let's create something together. Let's, play board games like chess, whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. Just be engaged physically and mentally so that emotionally you can process whatever you're not aware of and what you are aware of. But physically you can bring strength and the connection of that closeness because we need the physical touch. We need to be approved, validated. And the children at that age, all they want to do is belong somewhere. So if they don't belong and if they're not comfortable with emotionally unavailable parents, what kind of generation or the group do you think will be placing them in the future when they're developing with the lack of these really important traits that they should have?
Right. So, I mean, tell me one thing. I understand, I mean, all that you're saying, but in today's world, I mean, with this ever evolving artificial intelligence, where people are interacting with robots, right, and they are also interacting with their iPads, right? I mean, virtual reality is playing a big role in today's world, right?
Of course.
And you mentioned in 1960s also, right? So previously we used to be, I mean, humans are always touch based, community based, I mean, people, right? I mean, we love to talk to each other, but that is slowly going away, right, with this new technologies that are coming up and everything. So I understand your point that we need to again come, I mean, physically connect as a community, right? But how do we do that? Because in this new technology era, right, it seems every day seems to be harder.
Every day seems to be harder because even the needs and the availability that we can give to this topic in the community, we choose not to. We choose to replace it with something else because when we're hurting, what happens? Like when I'm hurting, I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't have strength. I want to heal. And if you can help me heal, right? But what happens when I used to come home and I'm not feeling well, I still put a smile on my face. I make sure dinner's on the table. I do my whatever I need to do. And the families are, other families are no different. How we replace it is whatever you can do in your home environment, replicate it outside. We have family members living all over the world. We can use technology to communicate, to check in. It's a lot easier. We can actually see them now. The first computer was made, what, in 1980s? The first, like, and it was the size of this room. The first printer, all these technologies. We've come a long way. Now everything is chipped. We have countries where banking is all done through literally like the blinking of the eye. People have chips in them. So we already somehow, combine like that organically with the technology. But how we make it work just by being aware. And if we're too busy, then just schedule this time in your agenda. Like, Wednesday nights we'll go again. I was going to say go see a movie. Right? Again, there's electronics. You screen with other people. You're not talking. You're sitting there for 90 minutes, 2 hours because in the Eastern and Western culture, they're very different when it comes to the family orientation. Okay. We start from home. We start with the values when where in the morning when you get up, you say, thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. Okay? You say, thank you for the roof over my head. Being grateful is such a huge importance in our existence that we take it for granted. Before you go to sleep, look back at your day, what you've achieved, what you haven't, and perhaps what needs to be worked on. Look at your day quickly. And I'm not saying revisit, okay, my God, I couldn't figure out this problem. Just revisit your day. Wow, I had a great day this morning. I had a great meeting. I had this, like the highlights. Be grateful for what you have achieved. Be grateful for your physical health, mental, emotional, the links and the people that you have touched. Because with gratitude, over time, everybody wants to achieve authenticity, the highest vibration in our realm. And people cannot, because what's happening, they don't know where they are. They don't know what they feel. They're lost. They're just running. They're running in circles. Even when you get in the car, you have your destination. So why don't you have a destination of your life, your pathway? Like, what is your calling here? Figure out what that is. And if you don't know, we are the round table. Healiness is the round table where it's not about the physical disease. It started like this, going back 26 years ago, because I started working with people that came with this, and I showed them how to fix it, and then we nourished it. The same thing with today. We have data that's telling us the system is wrong. And nobody's doing anything about it because we don't have communities set up where we can tap into and ask for help. We don't have communities where we can have a simple conversation, where we can pause that, ego, whatever people want to call it. But at the end of the day, it's just an excuse. So with our healiness program and, and independent of healiness, with my experience, because a lot of people, they like to work one-on-one, but they also, in order to build generations of success, you need to leave a blueprint to follow. And we don't know our history. Much of the history has been rewritten. So how do you know what mistakes you're writing or living if you don't know where you came from? I know a lot of the schools that, that I do a lot of work with, I ask the children, what's your grandma's name? What's your grandpa's name? What's your great grandma, great grandpa? They're looking at me. They have no idea. What did your grandma do? What does your grandma do? What do your grandparents do? What do you think they achieved the most in their life? What do you think makes them happy? And they start creating, inventing things because they don't know. Because they don't know. What do your parents do? What's the highlight of your night? What is your routine? They're creating things. They're imagining things. There's no routine. There's brushing the teeth. There's having dinner. There's going to bed and then getting up in the morning, doing it all over again because the parents are disconnected. It's very, very important that we go back to our roots, and it's very important that the parents are under evaluating really the nurturing component to themselves, the connection to the love, the acceptance, and everything that they haven't celebrated as they were growing up. Because most parents, they never celebrated except for your birthday. It was like, good job, Johnny, right? But they never said, oh my God, you did a great presentation. How did it go? How did you feel? What was it on? It was never really given a presence to be validated because Johnny did a good job on a presentation. You move on. And we need that as human. We need that emotional validation.
Yeah, I mean, in that way, I mean, Healiness is doing a wonderful job. I mean, like you mentioned, it's finding the purpose, the goal in life, right? And then, I mean, working towards it. I mean, through natural means, and also, I mean, through ways you can, right? Also, I would like to understand. So, I mean, since we are talking on the children topic a little bit more, right, and they are our next generation, right, and
Yes.
we need to have them sorted, we need to have them lead, I mean, in a correct way, right, life in a correct way. So I'll just take an example here, right? So say a child is watching iPad, right? I mean, every day they come from school and their first thing is pick up the phone and watch something on YouTube, right? Or watch a cartoon, right? Anything. It could be anything. So if the parent takes away the iPad or whatever the device is from the child, he or she throws a fit, right? And so as a parent, what should we do? I mean, should we just, I mean, let the child throw the fit and implement this 4x4 breathing technique and say, okay, let him act like the way he or she wants to. I'll just breathe, keep my calm, and then maybe talk after his fit is over.
Yes. So Ranjan, it's very interesting, and it's a great question. The reason why we were brought up to be punished when we did something wrong, but we had expectations. So in this instance, the parent just showing up, taking away the iPad, there was no introduction to the time frame, perhaps how long the child should have had the iPad for. Maybe a warning, okay, I'll take it in 2 minutes, and because we're going to have dinner. The emotional fit or the physical empowerment to show such a strong emotion has everything to do with unfairness of the situation. Okay, by the time they try the child through a fit, it's already too late because they're already in that emotional state, the rage. The anger in the physical cells and the physical body takes 6 hours consciously to get rid of the imprint. Okay. Again, this goes back, it bleeds into the intergenerational trauma where I've told you once, I've told you twice, and I'm going to take it away. Because the parents didn't position the rules, the parent didn't position the platform and the expectations so the child can follow. There was no conversation, there was no agreement, there was no communication, there was no safe community with the rules set up for both of them to show up on the same level. You as a child who's following the rules that you agree to, because after you have your time, your electronic time, we'll be doing this or that, but the expectation of the situation where everybody knows their place. So this is when we talk about parenting. I'm writing a book right now. You know, I'm reading different books on digital detox and parenting, and it's really not about the discipline as much as the communication as they grow to solidify their creativity, because their creativity goes down because we have cultures where you're taught and you're expected to obey, not to think. Right? We have cultures where as long as you tell them what to do, 1, 2, 3, 4, they'll be great. But if you leave it up to them, what do you think should be first? 1, 2, 4, 3, like what kind of stuff? They're lost. You have to tell them what to do because culturally, this is how they grew up. This is how their brain is formed. There was no empowerment in terms of creativity or, you know, being free in terms of creation. Now, when we talk about today's generation, or even going back 4 or 5 generations, we realize through testing, and again, this is all scientifically proven, children between the age of 2 and 6, their creativity by the time they're 12, because they're put in the educational system, goes down by 70%. Why? Because daycares and preschool programs, before they go to grade 1, society grabs them when they're 2, 3, 4. They're already disconnected from the parents. And they're told to do this. Now we're doing math. Now we're doing this. Now we're doing this. And you're doing it my way. Here's a sketch. You have to color inside the lines. And if you color outside, I deduct a grade. I deduct a point. Why? Because conditional formatting, because you want everybody to be the same, because then it's easier to control.
Right.
But then when we have children, when they, you know, talk about, okay, but I want to draw on my iPad, or I want to draw on my laptop, and I want to be creative, and they have colors and everything, then it's okay to stay longer because the parents are happy because they're creating something. But again, we haven't set the rules. We haven't set the time frame. We haven't set the expectations, because we can say, okay, you come home from school, you have a snack, you have an hour for your creativity, you want to play sports, you want to do this, dinner is at 6. Right? But we don't have that because most families are not even home by 6. But think about it. You know, most people, they work 9 to 5, or 8 till 4 or 9 to 9 or whatever it is. We don't have set dinner time. We don't have set breakfast time. We don't have set lunch time where you can connect with your kids. You don't have set time to connect with yourself. You're constantly running around. So to answer your question, the long answer, we don't have expectations set and we don't have clear enough communication where everybody knows their role.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's so true. I mean, us as parents, we have to set those rules, right? And also, uh, I mean, help the children think out of the box, right? Me and engage in community-driven programs, right? So yeah,
Yes,
I mean, I think Healiness is doing a wonderful job in making people realize that those things are important in life, right? We have forgotten all those things, right?
yes,
uh, so yeah, I mean, also tell me, like, so for example, I mean, you mentioned about corporations CEOs, right?
yes.
I mean, they always work in a very tight schedule. It's always anxiety whether this deal has gone through or not. I have this next meeting coming up, right? uh, so and even when you mentioned when they go on trips, right, they are always checking their phones, right? So what would be your advice to them as to, I mean, how can they calm down, or how can they be, I mean, with this breathing technique, how can they be more profitable? That's about.
Profitable. Yes. Yes. So corporations, we have the loss in productivity, but as long as they meet certain standards, they'll just keep going on,
Mm,
right? The corporations are businesses, it's a structure that ideally down the road doesn't end up replacing people. However, it's the idea of whatever it is that we produce that ends up being consumed.
mm,
The breathing technique is just one of the ways of bringing them into the healthier, state, internal state, without really having them meditate and sit, and do certain things or chant, because most of these guys, they're analytical, right? They want to see numbers. You tell me what to do and I'll do it, because they're creative, they're genius in their own way.
mm,
The creativity when it comes to, parenting themselves really comes down to the leadership skills and the creativity of everybody underneath them, like the middle executives, and then you have the workforce, and then you have, even people who make the cold calls, whatever it is, social media, to connect on the same level, to really realize that we're all one. We're all one consciousness,
mm,
regardless of your monetary, I guess, status. At the end of the day, when a person is sick. The only time ego steps down is when we're sick.
mm,
Why? Because then we feel we're really interconnected with the pain, and all this neglecting comes up, and all we want to do is get better. So there's no filtering or sorting. There's no thinking outside of the box. We're just here. We're hurting and we want to get better. Now, the mental component is no different. It's just we keep pushing and replacing until it just becomes too anxious. It becomes too busy, too stressed. And anxiousness, all of these feelings, they have positive and negative aspect of it. Some people, when they're anxious and worked up, they deliver the most material, because they know this is the deadline, like you said, this is the meeting, this is what I need to meet, this is what I need to deliver. If I pulled 4 all-nighters, this is what I'm doing, this is what I need to do. And then they collapse. And when we collapse physically, we really hit the floor with a disease, because we're physical beings.
mm,
So using our programs, using the modalities that it's not branding or, publicly talking about energy, because what happens when you don't understand something? You just put it over here and you don't understand it. So like, how am I going to take this and talk about or apply it to my life? It's really looking inside. It's understanding that, hey, these are the numbers in terms of productivity in the corporate realm. This works, it doesn't work. But what do you do when you're off hours?
mm,
How much sleep do you get? What does your nutritional look like? Do you have a neglected sleep? Do you have sleep deprivation, which is usually associated with gray matter in the prefrontal cortex, which affects memory, attention, and the impulse control. So again, if I'm really good at something, I don't need to think, I deliver, right? But then I step outside of there, and then there's maybe a question that somebody didn't hear my answer to, and then I react emotionally and I start yelling, or I, express a comment that's not appropriate in the situation. There's your impulse control. The research, we have so much research, and all of it highlights that in order that 1/3 of the children today, they're not getting adequate sleep. The parents are not getting adequate sleep, and this is vital for the brain function. It's vital for the cellular, creation, because cells, they either destroy themselves or they replicate, right? Similarly, when we talk about poor nutrition, this affects the brain development as well. When you're tired, you don't want to eat. When you're stressed, some people don't eat, some people overeat. So you care what you eat when you're tired? No, you just want to, you're not even realizing that you've just turned to chips, whatever it is, which is where your healthy snacks come in. So we can at least, offset this a little bit, but it affects everything. Stress affects everything. So we're targeting corporations because we have a huge message to deliver with huge experience. It's not just breathwork. It's not just generational trauma. It's a program. It's access to me. It's access to my knowledge and to learning that never stops. Just like I wouldn't be going to my mechanic for, dental work. I want to be going to my dentist, to the mechanic. Like, it doesn't make sense. But it has to hurt. Something has to be wrong to be fixed. But we haven't been conditioned to think or assess mentally, emotionally where we are. What is my life path? Am I happy with what I'm doing? I could be making 6 figures and I'm constantly miserable. I come home to an empty house, right? A beautiful car outside, and I drive it. Everybody's looking at me, but I'm not speaking to anybody. I walk somewhere, people are intimidated to come talk to me because I'm not realizing that my energy is of such a high ego that, and then I'm thinking, well, all these people don't want to talk to me. Like, I don't understand what's wrong with me. Look, there's nothing wrong, but notice how my voice just went higher, because that's not me. It's my ego. That's not the energy who we are. So then energetically and emotionally and mentally, we're empty because we're trying to satisfy the external and connect to outsider people and show that we're worth more, but we're empty inside. So how can you be worth more? So it's very, very simple. We just need a blueprint. We need to access these young minds, the parents, because they figure out their niche, right? They have the financial freedom to support, because now they know, hey, most of my stuff, my God, I'm losing 200 billion as a country in productivity. So I'm just creating another band-aid, another band-aid. Well, my corporation will be different. And this is the change that we bring to the table.
Right. Yeah, and so you also mentioned, I mean, there was one technique where we inhaled through the nose and exhaled through the nose, right? And
Yes.
another you demonstrated where we inhaled through the mouth and exhaled through the mouth, right?
Yes.
So now coming back to the latter, I mean, when should we inhale through the mouth and exhale through the mouth? I mean, is there a particular scenario?
Yes. So when we want to activate, you ideally want to do that in the morning, let's say. Before sleep, you would use the nasal breathing. Why? Because this will also help you calm down and you can fall asleep and then stay asleep versus pass out or spin, spin, spin. And then it's 1 o'clock in the morning and then you've missed, from 10 p.m. when digestion comes, when everything else works, in terms of how the organs work. So in the morning, if you want to activate, have more energy, you can even do, 4 breaths in or 2, and then exhale. But the box breathing, when we breathe through the mouth, through the nose versus the mouth, the difference is activation versus downgradation. So when we're bringing in more energy, or we're just trying to come to use whatever is sitting there because it's not working for us.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I think, I mean, there is I mean, we learned a lot. At least I learned a lot from what you demonstrated today, right? And I mean, also the children and parent relationship and the traumas, right? We'll again obviously dive deep into those topics in our next podcast, right? So any parting thoughts sorry or any other suggestions or advice you might want to give us?
Absolutely. Moving forward with the awareness.
Mm,
So when we talked about your example with the child throwing a fit because, the parent came in and took away the device,
mm,
we need to set expectations for us. We need to set expectations for the environment that we live in. So if this is between friends, you to your friend connection, the children, whatever the relationship we set, it's a two-way street. And as long as people know their place and with their expectations, communication would always be there. So
right,
the most important takeaway, I would say, is moving forward with the awareness, because when we create a supportive environment, it involves addressing one's own unresolved emotional traumas and further experiences that don't need to happen. If we're communicating, we're creating a breakthrough, we're creating a nourishing environment, we are nourishing our children to the love and the intersection of information through the invitation of, reinforcement of who we are. Because regardless of what you tell them, they look at, yeah, but mommy, but you did this, but now you're telling me this, then why are you doing this?
mm,
Right? You look at the father, my father was always a tough man, and today he's the most nurturing out of everybody,
mm,
you know and building that and promoting that emotional resilience without really using that verbal communication only, just being it, self-confidence, securing a sense of attachment to yourself so that you can validate who you are, be authentic, focus on, if you allow the kids screen time, then you are the one in charge because you're the one who's giving them this free time to
mm,
explore.
mm,
But there's a lot of subliminal messaging. There's a lot of AI is very important. It's been studying us for like a long time.
mm,
So by the clicks on whatever ads we want to see, this is what memorizes in terms of behavior of whoever is running that device.
right,
So if they're not monitored, if they're downloading different apps and we don't know what's going on, this is also a dangerous part.
mm,
Now, we can't control them too much either because they need to be creative. But I think at the end of the day, it comes down to the personal growth, self-awareness, where the parents can also establish a foundation for their children's health development, physically, emotionally, and mentally. But we can't do that if we don't show up for ourselves first.
right, right. Absolutely. Yeah, and just one last question from me. So, I mean, you mentioned you also touched upon the topic of exercise, right? And
Yes.
that is very crucial for our body and as well as the mind, right?
Yes.
Now, during exercise, I have seen most people breathing from their mouth, right? Uh, so, is it healthy breathing from the mouth or breathing from the nose during exercise? What would
It
you say?
depends on the exercise,
Mm,
right? If we're lifting, you're dropping, right?
mm,
So you want to bring in more oxygen so that when you drop or when you move into exertion, you want to exhale. If you're swimming and it's more rhythmic,
mm,
you use your nose, like, or you use it depending how rhythmic it is, right? If you're bouncing, you want to stay in the course, so whatever is easier for you, because you might be bouncing on and off, or like it depends what your exercise is in terms of your heart rate, your pulse, but also duration if you're doing high intensity training,
mm,
because these guys are like, they're pumped up and they go go go, right? But then they have 2 minutes rest because for 3 minutes they've just been really doing physical activity.
right.
So they need the adrenaline. You have to breathe through the nose, otherwise you don't have enough. But
Mm,
then in between, you come back and you breathe through your mouth, through your nose, to calm your breath, to
mm,
collect,
mm,
to save the energy so that you can continue with the next task.
right, right. Understood. Well, I mean, it's great having you with us again today, right? We got a lot of knowledge, and yeah, I mean, we will be again back next week with another such interesting and informative topic. So, thank you for giving us your precious and valuable time today, right? And hope my questions didn't bother you too much.
No, there's no bother. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much for creating a space and a platform for questions and answers.
Absolutely. Right. So, yeah, folks, so do not forget to like, share, and comment on the video. With your thoughts. So, it only helps us to improve and bring such more great and informative content to you every day, every week. Right. So, we are having this series with Ina, where we'll be diving deep into more such topics in order to, I mean, focus on the emotional and mental aspects of things also, right? And which is very critical given the today's society and the world that we live in, right? So please also subscribe to our channel, and yeah, see you again soon. So stay healthy, stay fit, and thank you enough for joining with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.